Welcome to season 2 of the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where we take a deep dive into different educational topics to help you optimize your life. I am Jeremy, your host. I am here today with my co-host, Mr. Jeffrey Reno.
What's going on, brother?
Another day, rocking and rolling. I guess it's not another day. It is a 1 year. I don't know if it's exactly 1 year to the day. 1 year post-op review with the doctor today.
It's pretty close because you were still in a sling for Summer Smash, which is only a month away.
That's true. I can't remember the
So
exact
it has
date.
to be pretty close.
But I'm scrolling back here because that's a great thing about phones and calendars. Looking back. We had the H2F symposium last year, and I remember I just had it done before I went to that.
While you're looking, does it feel like a year, or does it feel like it's been
Man,
6 months or
maybe
two?
it's an age thing, maybe it's a dad thing, but the days are long, the years are short.
Mm-hmm.
It is flying by. So I think it was April 23rd. So almost a little over a
Oh,
year. April
yeah.
23rd was surgery date. So a little bit less, one year, 1 week. So if you're a new listener, so a year ago, I was deadlifting and tore the distal bicep tendon completely off the bone, which was something that, never really had experience inside of lifting. And it was, one of the things I think it happens as we age. And I remember, my wife really getting me, she looked it up and it's like basically the most common injury for a middle-aged male was this injury. And I'm like, great. And I just remember being so frustrated because I had been back in the gym, consistently for 6 weeks. I've been consistently doing deadlifts. I warmed up really well. Like I did everything that we should do to minimize the risk of an injury, especially as a 40-some-year-old gentleman. And it still happened, right? Which shows me like, hey guys and gals, as we're aging, we got to take care of our body in multiple different ways, right? So not only, hey, strength and cardiovascular, but also mobility, flexibility, and those types of things. But it's been a great year. It's been some great experiences this past year. I think I have let the pendulum swing here recently. When I got back in with the clearance, about 6 months ago that I can lift. I think I was like a kid in a candy store. So it's like, ooh, I'm getting stronger each week. And, I just loved, seeing some mass come back and seeing some size come back. But that also affected my performance on the other side of things, right? So we talked about this on a different podcast, but, I had the slowest 2 mile time on the Army PT test that I've ever had, right? So in 8 years of being in, it was my slowest one, which was left me a little bit frustrating, but it's a simple weight thing. I was 225 pounds, a week ago. When you and I did our body fat test down here, I was around 13% body fat. I think I'm actually leaner now than I was then, but I'm heavier, right? So I feel comfortable where I'm at as a power athlete. But it just wasn't. It's not good to carry that mass for the run. So,
Right.
but like I said, that's just been a good experience, for me and as a coach, like I'm able to have those conversations with people and I think I did a really good job in my mindset and when I did get the injury and focused on different type of training. But once again, I think I went a little bit too far with that, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And it's weird with a lot of injuries. I've like two torn shoulders, broken multiple bones, but it's like a lot of those things just happen. You could do all the recovery. You look at some of the highest performing athletes, it's just a torn ACL and they were like walking up the stairs. There could be like freak stuff like that. And it's the recovery that makes all the difference. So I'm excited to hear about, a year of recovery, even though most of that recovery window was 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, I think it's
But yeah,
a great, conversation to have with people so you know what to look forward to and do's or don'ts, right? And like a lot of things I think in conversations, pull what you want out of this, leave what you don't want, right? Like, pull you some nuggets out and know, hey, ooh, okay, I didn't know omega 3s could decrease inflammation. Let me increase my omega 3s. Great, pull that out. But I think first and foremost, when you do have an injury, you have to remember that it's just as much mental as it is physical. Okay, because there's a lot of there could be frustration that comes, there could be anger, there could be some grief in there, whatever you're feeling, it's normal. Understand that feelings are meant, and emotions are meant to be felt, so there's nothing wrong with that. But what I remember saying is like, Jeremy, you got 24 hours, right? You got 24 hours to be upset about it, but then the next day you got to figure out, okay, how do I improve and where do I go from here, right? I think that's a great way to look at a lot of things in life. A breakup, a failure of something is like give yourself, hey, you can be upset, right? And sometimes with this, I want people to understand that you might not be able to be upset for 5 minutes. You got to move on, right?
Yeah.
Depending on what the situation is. But, hey, all right, cool. Bitch about it for less than 24 hours, Jeremy. And then you got to focus on what you can do physically, right? You got to shift and be like, okay, I can no longer use this bicep, but I can still use my legs. I can work on my cardiovascular fitness. When are going to be some time, frames along the way that I can start adding in a little bit more cardio within, my training? What can I do versus focus on what I can't do? So I think that's a big thing is for someone when they have injury is first and foremost, break that cycle of thinking, what can I not do? And focus on what you can do.
And I think something that you had that, it would never come up in this scenario, but you already had a good amount of muscle on you. So when you do get injured, you're able to maintain it a little bit more than when, someone on the lower end who doesn't work out, doesn't do any of this stuff, and they get injured and they're having to build from zero. Luckily, you had a very good baseline that you were able to maintain from.
Well, and I think that's what we should all do, and that's why we should work out, right? And what I mean by that is you're building this buffer against accidents and quote wellness, right? Or sickness. You're building a buffer there, okay? And yeah, I think because I had more mass, right? And then I was still training my right arm, so I would do bicep curls with my right arm, and then I would just do range of motion with my left. So once I had surgery, and if this was my range of motion inside my brace, then I would do a full curl over here and then just whatever range of motion. Because there is some data out there that your body will respond when you do single, unilateral movements like that on an injured, arm or leg, right? So once again, focusing on what can I do versus not getting like, oh, I can't do that. Okay. So I think that's something, to really look at, from that total mindset.
So who was outside of maybe like the doctor or whatever, who was kind of your first call once you found out it was torn of recovery steps?
Yeah. So I'm at the first call about what to do, was actually Scott from Summit, who we've had on multiple times, right? Good relationship with Scott, where just message him and be like, hey, here's my injury. What should I take to help promote healing, right? And then once he messaged over what to take, the next question was, how do I take it? What's the protocol? What do I do? Okay, so literally was text conversation there. Now you could say that's a doctor, right? He owns the business, he employs doctors, and he has a bunch of knowledge when it comes to testosterone replacement in males and females, and also peptides, right? So I
Mhm.
leaned on someone that had at the time. And Scott's listening to this. I'm not saying I know more than he does at peptides. What I'm saying is I've increased my knowledge on peptides in the last year, right? But I didn't know what to take for that point, right? And he said, hey, one of the best peptides you can take for injuries for muscle tissue and recovery is BP 157. You want to take it, as close to the injured site as possible. Cool. Roger that. Order me 2 bottles, right? Like that's the conversation, right? And then shout out to Summit. Remember, if you're a customer, a client of Summit, anytime that you're doing peptides, you can just message the doctor, you can message their workers, and that is something that you can do, right? A lot of people don't understand that with them and doing hormonal replacement therapy, that is just one silo of their business, right? So my hormonal, my testosterone and my vitamin B12, those are things that get shipped every 2 months. That is my protocol. Then if I want to do extra, for injuries, or as in the past year, I don't want to get too far off this, but going down the rabbit hole, what peptides could help with recovery. I also looked at what peptides could help me with the aging process. So
Mhm.
I've recently started on NAD and I do NAD in my test. That is my protocol now, right? So I can have that conversation with the DO and now, boom, go there, right? So that's just another perk of using them versus some hormonal replacement clinics, or maybe if you're working with your physician just on HRT, you don't have that luxury. Okay. So BP 57 was something I'd done from that aspect. And then I had knowledge, a few years ago before this, wrecked my mountain bike, had to have AC yeah, AC joint. Is that right? AC joint? Yeah. um, had to have shoulder surgery. So I had done some things that I thought really helped me there to recover too, right? So it wasn't my first rodeo in an injury like this. Um, so I did double up my omega-3 fatty acids. So I generally take around 4,000, 6,000 milligrams of that a day. So I doubled that up to 8,000, sometimes 10,000 milligrams of omega-3s. I went back on First Form's joint mobility because our joint mobility is a great product in two ways. One, it acts like an NSAID where if you take joint mobility, it can help decrease the pain inside of a joint for short term, but it's also got some nutrients in there that help with long term building back up the joint. So went back on joint mobility twice a day. I said go back on it because I used it for the surgery before, and I use it anytime that I'm feeling my joints are inflamed. It's not a supplement that I use continuously. So I like to point that out.
Mhm.
So that was the other protocol, doubled up omega threes, and then added joint mobility back in, and then just dialed in the nutrition a little bit with aspect of adding collagen back in, as part of my protein, and that was kind of that recovery, process from that standpoint.
So, um, once you're on these, is this prior to surgery, post surgery? When did you start that protocol?
Yeah, all this was post because I got in pretty fast, right? So these conversations were happening. The mega threes, you could say, was pre-surgery because I had that here. I didn't have any joint mobility, so I had to order it. And like I said, injury happened fairly fast. Injured one week, surgery next week. So by the time all that got here, it would be post surgery from that aspect. And probably the only thing else that I used that was delayed, and this comes from one of our team members too, which is awesome, is Lee Ori. Ori, you got your right. Said or for 4 years. Ori, with the recovery cream. And that's where I'd used it before, but once again, I really wasn't sold on it because I mean it would help, but once again, I'm sore a lot, right? Like, I don't know if that's just I'm getting older and traveling, but like there's aches and pains all the time from training.
Right.
Yes, we've got a bottle of it there.
Yeah.
So and anytime I have joint pain, I'd increase omega threes. So I would use this cream too, and the pain would go away, but it wasn't like I was, oh, this was great doing it during surgery and post surgery rather. I think the cream aided, but where I really tell people like it aided in, and I know it had to aid in the complete recovery because the scar, and you can even see it on here. Like you can
Right.
barely see if you know where to look, the scar, running down here. But
Mhm.
it aided in the recovery of the actual, incision site. And I was like, what's in there that helps with that? And he's like, well, we didn't make it for, wound healing. But then he was like, it could because of what was in it. Um, so that was kind of my protocol to recover faster from surgery from that aspect, right? And what I did mentally was just focus on what I could. So I got back into riding my bike more, stationary cardio, really focused on building cardio with training for an Ironman. Had the dates marked on the calendar for some things like, went and did the half in Louisville, without even swimming. I'd been biking, I had run, but I hadn't got cleared to do really any exercise with the arm yet. I think I got cleared on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and then we were doing the half Ironman on Saturday. And I had the mental ability to do that because of past experience, but also just the thought process of, hey, like I was saying, you got the injury, focus on where you go from now, change your identity and focus on your recovery aspect. Fast forward to November, did a personal best in the full Ironman. So fastest I ever done a full Ironman was this past November. I think I got a little bit more in the tank. Just under circumstances, I think I can run a little bit faster than what I did last year. So, that's still a goal in the next few years. Got cleared to lift after that at the end of November, 100% cleared. And I think this is something I would say for people, based on your abilities. And I think I missed lifting so much because I enjoy it and it comes easy to me relative to cardio. I want to point that out, right? And this is why I said, back on the last podcast, we're talking about adversity and why I'm making myself run and do running events is because lifting comes fairly easy. Doesn't mean I
Mhm.
don't work at it. Doesn't mean I don't work at it, but it just comes fairly easy if that makes sense, right?
Right.
And I think I let that pendulum swing a little bit too much as I got like clearance, from that aspect. So I think that's something long term I would have people really take a step back and think of is like, hey, make sure you don't let like in life let that pendulum swing way over here, and focus on something that you've been missing a little bit. Let other things fall to the wayside.
And to wrap it up, I think everyone obviously do your own research, but the biggest takeaway I can get to is people a lot of you go into the hospitals, you go on these things, and you see online, you get scared of injecting things or whatever. Do your own research, but also schedule an appointment with Summit. Ask all the questions. They're super friendly. You can sit on the phone for 30 minutes and ask all the questions you need. But don't be scared of these peptides because they do work. They will aid in your recovery tenfold.
100%. I mean, any of the listeners, like, hey, I would encourage you this. Yes, all transparent, they're a sponsor of the podcast. Yes, they are a sponsor, but we both are customers of them and we pay for it, right? Like, we pay to be customers. He pays as I like to say, a friend. And literally, we have no contract. And how I love it, how Scott and all of us work. Like, I see him twice a year and he gives me a blank check. He's like, fill it out, right? Like, we have our amount. It's not like a blank check. I can do anything I want to, but just saying like
Yeah.
that's the relationship and the trust. Okay. So what I would encourage anyone, invest in yourself. Invest the $200, 200 some change. I can't remember exactly what the blood work is right now. Invest in yourself and have a phone call with them. Okay. They can lay out what you want to do. And then if you choose to work with them, great. If you don't choose, at least you have the knowledge and you have the baseline, right? And this backup of any injury would happen to you, like I don't want to say a lifeline, but that direct access to some things that can help you, from that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't say it better. Once you're in the system, it's a lot faster than going through it right out of the gate. So definitely give them a call. The link is below in the show notes. Just click it, fill out the form, and they'll talk back in about 5 minutes.
Hey, before we wrap it up, I have an announcement. Dude, I think it's third annual. Gosh, third annual Team Alpha event at First Form headquarters is set and will go on sale next week. So I don't know when this will come out. Maybe it'll come out next week. Maybe it's already for sale. But all you need to do is be in our Facebook. Okay, we'll make sure in the show notes to put Team Alpha Facebook link. I want to invite anybody. Okay, what I mean by that is if you're a listener of the podcast, maybe you're not in my coaching group, but you're a listener of the podcast and you regularly listen. You want to come out to Team Alpha? Come out to Team Alpha because I consider Team. The reason it's Team Alpha was it was the first mega group, and my goal and my vision originally was to help coaches stay in that position of coaching at First Form and be like a mega team. So I always wanted like a Team Bravo, Team Charlie, and things like that. It's not went like that yet, but that's where the Team Alpha, just to give everybody history, of that is. Okay, so July 9th through July 12th, or 12th. I kind of butchered all that. July 9th through July 12th. July 9th, we'll check in the evening time, take a tour of First Form, just kind of get settled. The 10th and the 11th is going to be like a lecture format with movement. So I'm going to have a lot of my friends come in. I got two PhD college professors that are going to educate. I've got a couple trainers that will train and then go do other stuff. We have all this set up, right? So it'll be a great day of lecture, movement, lecture, movement. And then on Saturday, we're going to do a ruck together as a team and then go to a Cardinals game. And then we got dinner 2 nights at First Form. All of this, because First Form fronts the bill on a lot of the stuff for only $99. Okay, so for $100, so it's gonna be 99 plus whatever fee I used for the sign up page. So for around $100, you get two pieces of apparel, tickets to the game, fed for 2 nights, and all kinds of education. You can't beat it, but there's limited tickets. So need to get this one out, Reno, next week because I don't know if the tickets will last the week, but I would love to see people there.
I'll drop this one Thursday, May 8th. If
So you better get. Oh, okay. So drop it this week. Okay.
I'll drop it Thursday, so that way you
Okay.
have plenty of time
This
to put
one
on your
drops
calendar.
fairly fast. Next Monday, 12th, inside the Facebook group. We'll also put the Facebook link in the show notes if you're not already in our Facebook group. Have a great day, and we'll see you guys soon.
So you,